Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy what you're about to hear, hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from and what you're doing right now. Let's get into it. What I'm about to tell you defies everything I thought I knew about reality, about myself, about the nature of existence itself. By the end of this, you'll understand why some mysteries are better left unsolved, why some patterns should never be recognized. But I saw them, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. The fluorescent bulb above my desk had been flickering for 3 days straight. I kept meaning to replace it, but the rhythm had become almost meditative. On, off, like a heartbeat struggling to maintain its pace. The stack of manila folders on my left had grown to 17 cases, each one a death that made no sense to anyone but me. I pushed my glasses up and rubbed the bridge of my nose. 3:47 a.m. The building superintendent had stopped asking why my lights were always on at impossible hours. In a city like Newark, people learned not to ask questions about the strange ones who kept to themselves. The latest file sat open in front of me. Rebecca Hartwell, 34, found in her Chicago apartment. No signs of forced entry, no wounds, no toxicology hits. Just a woman sitting in her favorite chair with her eyes wide open and completely empty. Not dead in the way most people understand death. The coroner's report used words like unexplained cardiac arrest. But I'd read enough reports to know when medical examiners were grasping at acceptable explanations. This was the 9th case in 4 months. I spread the photographs across my desk, arranging them geographically. Seattle, Denver, Chicago, Atlanta. Each victim shared the same characteristics: healthy, no prior medical conditions, found sitting or standing with their eyes open. But what connected them wasn't visible in the files. It was in the dates, the times, the positions of their bodies. My mind processed information differently than most people. Always had. The nuns at St. Augustine's Home for Exceptional Youth called it a gift. Dr. Patterson, the neurologist they brought in when I was 12, called it profound cognitive enhancement with pattern recognition capabilities that exceed standard parameters. I called it exhausting. I could look at seemingly random data and see the architecture underneath. Numbers became geometry. Chaos revealed structure. It's why I'd solved 43 cases that local police departments had marked as unsolvable. It's also why I had no friends, no family beyond the faded memory of Sister Margaret's kind face, and an apartment that smelled like coffee and old paper. I picked up the Denver file. Thomas Kellerman, 41. His body had been found at 2:17 a.m. facing northeast. The Seattle victim, Jennifer Wu, had died at 11:43 p.m. facing east. I pulled out my notebook and started plotting coordinates, adding timestamps, calculating angles. 3 hours later I had it. The pattern wasn't on a map. It was 3-dimensional. Each death occurred at a specific point in space and time that, when plotted correctly, formed a geometric structure, a lattice. And it was growing, expanding outward from a central point I couldn't quite identify yet. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, ice settled in my stomach. The structure was perfect, too perfect. It followed a mathematical progression that didn't exist in any system I'd encountered, and I'd studied everything from Fibonacci sequences to chaos theory. This was something else, something designed with an intelligence that understood not just mathematics, but the fundamental architecture of reality itself. I was reaching for my coffee when the air in my apartment changed. It's difficult to describe the sensation. Imagine the pressure shift before a thunderstorm, but concentrated, directional. The temperature dropped 15 degrees in an instant. My breath crystallized in front of my face. The flickering bulb stopped mid-pulse and held steady, casting the room in harsh, unwavering light. I turned slowly. A man stood in the corner of my apartment. I hadn't heard the door open, hadn't heard footsteps. He simply existed where nothing had been 3 seconds before. He wore a dark suit that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and his face was ordinary in a way that felt deliberately constructed, like someone had assembled features that would be instantly forgettable. But his eyes were wrong. They held depth that human eyes shouldn't possess, like looking into a tunnel that stretched backward into infinity. Who are you? My voice came out steadier than I felt. My hand moved toward the desk drawer where I kept the Glock 19 I'd purchased after solving a case involving a particularly unstable serial killer. Don't. His voice resonated at a frequency that I felt in my chest cavity. The weapon is irrelevant. I'll determine what's relevant. I opened the drawer anyway. The gun was gone. I'd checked it 6 hours ago. I always checked it before settling in for the night. My name is Uriel. He stepped forward and I noticed his feet made no sound against the hardwood floor. I need your help investigating a crime. I forced myself to breathe normally, to engage the analytical part of my mind that had gotten me through every impossible situation I'd ever encountered. You're in my home uninvited at 7 in the morning. Whatever you want, call the police. I don't do domestic cases. The crime didn't occur domestically. He gestured to the files spread across my desk. It occurred across multiple planes of existence. What you're investigating is the echo, the footprints left behind when something breaks through from one reality into another. I looked at the pattern I'd mapped, then back at him. You're saying these deaths are connected to dimensional incursion? That's science fiction. No. Uriel moved closer, and the temperature dropped another 5 degrees. I'm saying they're connected to murder. Systematic, calculated murder performed by something that shouldn't be capable of it, and you're the only human alive who can help us stop it. Us? I kept my body angled, maintaining defensive positioning even though every instinct screamed that normal self-defense tactics would be meaningless here. The heavenly host. He said it without drama, without emphasis, just a statement of fact. I laughed. It came out harsh, edged with the hysteria I was struggling to suppress. Right. And I suppose you're an angel? Is this some kind of elaborate prank? Did Patterson put you up to this? Uriel raised his hand. The world fractured. I can't describe it better than that. My vision split into layers, each one showing me different versions of the same space. I saw my apartment as it existed now, as it had existed 50 years ago when it was part of a textile factory, as it would exist 200 years from now, abandoned and overgrown. I saw the people who had lived here, died here, loved. I saw the framework underneath reality itself, geometric patterns of energy that held existence together like invisible scaffolding. And then it snapped back. I was on my knees, vomiting into the trash can beside my desk. My head felt like it was being crushed in a vice. Blood dripped from my nose onto the floor. What? I gasped. What did you do to me? I showed you a fraction of what exists beyond your normal perception. Uriel's voice held something that might have been regret. I apologize. Most humans cannot process even that much without significant neural damage. But you're not most humans. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, staring at the blood. What do you mean? Later. Right now, I need you to understand the severity of what's happening. He gestured to the files again. These victims were killed by an angel, one of my kind. But the method of killing is impossible. Angels cannot take human life directly. We're bound by laws older than your species, woven into the fabric of what we are. Breaking those laws should unmake us, erase us from existence. But this one has found a way to circumvent those restrictions. I pulled myself back into my chair, forcing my mind to engage despite the pounding in my skull. Why come to me? You're supposedly divine beings. Can't you handle your own problems? We can't see the pattern. Uriel's expression shifted, and for the first time I saw something human in it. Frustration. We exist too far inside the system. We're part of the architecture itself. We need someone who can step back, who can see the design from the outside, someone whose mind operates on principles that bridge human and divine cognition. That's not a thing. But even as I said it, I thought about the geometric structure I'd mapped, the mathematical progression that shouldn't exist. It is a thing. Uriel moved to my desk, looking down at my notes. Rare but real. Your mind processes information in ways that parallel how we perceive reality. It's why you can solve impossible cases. Why you see connections that others miss. You're translating between human perception and something closer to divine understanding without realizing it. I wanted to argue. Wanted to throw him out. Pretend this conversation had never happened. But I looked at the pattern I'd discovered, at the perfect geometric progression, and knew he was telling some version of the truth. Even if I believed you, I said slowly, even if any of this was real, why would I help? These are your people, your problems. Because the next victim is targeted. Uriel pulled a photograph from inside his jacket and placed it on my desk. And you know her. I looked down at the image. My heart stopped. Sister Margaret. Older now. Gray hair where there had been brown, but unmistakably the woman who had raised me, who had taught me to channel my racing thoughts into productive patterns, who had held me during the nightmares I couldn't explain, whispering that I was special, that I was meant for something important. The killer has accelerated their timeline, Uriel said quietly. They'll reach her in 72 hours. We can't protect her. But you can find them. You can stop this. I stared at the photograph, my mind racing through scenarios, probabilities, outcomes. Sister Margaret had saved me when I was 8 years old and spiraling into patterns I couldn't control. Had taught me meditation, focus, discipline, had given me the tools to survive with a mind that never stopped analyzing, never stopped seeing connections. What aren't you telling me? I looked up at Uriel. There's something else. I can see it in your body language, the way you're standing, the micro expressions you're trying to suppress. Whatever you need me for, it's not just about stopping a killer. Uriel was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. You're right. There's more. But if I tell you everything now, you'll refuse. And she'll die. They'll all die. So I'm asking you to trust me for the next 72 hours. Help me stop this and I'll answer every question you have. I'll tell you things about yourself that you've wondered your entire life. I thought about walking away, about telling him to leave, locking my door, pretending I'd never seen those files. But I looked at Sister Margaret's face and knew I'd already made my choice. I need access to all the crime scenes, I said. Physical access. And I need complete files on every victim, not just what the police documented. Everything. Uriel nodded. Done. We leave in 1 hour. I need coffee first. That can be arranged. He moved toward the door, then stopped. You should know that once we start this, there's no going back. What you learn will change how you see everything, including yourself. Everything changed the moment you appeared in my apartment. I started gathering the files. I'm just deciding whether to run from it or understand it. Uriel's expression shifted into something that might have been respect. You're more like them than I expected. Like who? But he was already gone. The temperature returned to normal. The flickering bulb resumed its erratic pattern, and I was left staring at the photograph of the only person who had ever felt like family, wondering what I'd just agreed to. I looked back at my geometric pattern, at the lattice of death spreading across the country. And for the first time in my life, I wondered if my ability to see patterns wasn't a gift at all. Maybe it was designed. Maybe I was designed. And maybe whoever created me was about to call in the debt. The first crime scene was in Seattle, in a neighborhood where tech money had transformed old warehouses into expensive lofts. Jennifer Wu's apartment was still sealed with police tape, but Uriel walked through the door as if the lock didn't exist. I heard the mechanism click from the inside, and the door swung open. Breaking and entering, I muttered, stepping through. Great start. The local authorities have been notified to disregard any security alerts for the next hour. Uriel moved into the apartment with purpose, his footsteps still making no sound. You have free access. The apartment was exactly as described in the file. Minimalist furniture, large windows overlooking Puget Sound, everything ordered and clean except for the chair. Jennifer Wu's favorite reading chair, according to her roommate's statement. That's where they'd found her, sitting upright, book open in her lap, eyes staring at nothing. I knelt beside the chair, pulling out my UV light. The police had processed the scene thoroughly, but they'd been looking for physical evidence, fingerprints, DNA, signs of struggle. I was looking for something else. What killed her wasn't physical, I said, running the light over the fabric. No residue, no chemical signatures, but there's something. I leaned closer, my eyes tracking patterns in the dust that had settled since the police cleared out. The air moved, right here. A displacement, circular pattern radiating from approximately 6 feet above where she sat. You can see that? Uriel's voice held genuine surprise. I can extrapolate it. I stood, moving around the chair, mapping the invisible disturbance. Whatever happened, it came from above, descended directly onto her. The book in her lap is open to page 147, but her bookmark was found on page 203. She was reading backward through the book when she died. Why would someone read backward? They wouldn't, not consciously. I pulled out my notebook, sketching the scene. But if you're experiencing temporal distortion, if your perception of causality is fragmenting, you might flip through pages trying to find something that makes sense. She knew something was wrong, probably for several minutes before she died. The ice in my stomach grew heavier. I moved to the window, looking out at the position of nearby buildings. She was found at 11:43 p.m. The angle of sight from here means the last thing she saw before she died was the reflection in that office building across the street. She was looking at herself. The others were the same, Uriel confirmed. Each victim's final sight line was directed at their own reflection. Vanity doesn't kill people. No, but recognition does. I turned to face him. Explain. Uriel walked to the window, and for the first time, I noticed how the light seemed to bend around him subtly, as if he existed slightly out of phase with normal reality. The angel we're hunting kills through perception, through being truly seen. When a human looks upon an angel's true form, their consciousness can't process the information. Most experience what you might call religious ecstasy or terror. But this angel has corrupted that mechanism, made it lethal. So the victim saw your suspect, and it killed them? More precisely, the suspect allowed itself to be seen, made itself visible in a specific way that burns out human consciousness like an overloaded circuit. But there's a problem with that theory. Which is, angels can't manifest visibly to humans without divine permission. It's not possible. The laws that govern our existence prevent it absolutely. Uriel's expression tightened. Yet somehow this one is doing it, and with each murder it's growing stronger, more present in your reality. I processed this, my mind automatically filing information, building the profile, a serial killer that grows more powerful with each victim. That suggests it's not just killing for the sake of killing, it's feeding, transforming. Precisely. Uriel gestured to the chair. What else do you see? I looked at the scene again, forcing myself to look past the obvious. The chair faced the window, the book in the victim's lap, the position of her hand still holding the pages open. And then I saw it. Her pupils. I moved closer, pulling out the case file photos. In the photographs taken at the scene, her pupils are fully dilated, but the room was well lit when they found her. Her pupils should have constricted post-mortem in response to the light, unless the last thing she saw was darkness, Uriel finished. Not absence of light, the presence of something that absorbs it. I felt the pieces clicking together, that familiar sensation when a pattern revealed itself. You said angels can't manifest without permission. But what if this one isn't manifesting? What if it's creating an absence, a hole in reality where it should be? The victims aren't seeing the angel. They're seeing where it's removed itself from existence. Uriel stared at me for a long moment. That's not possible. But it makes sense. A negative space, an angel-shaped void that human consciousness tries to fill and fails. Because there's nothing there to process, just absence given form. I was pacing now, the theory building momentum. That's why there's no physical evidence, why you can't track it. It's not entering reality, it's carving itself out of it. If you're right, Uriel said slowly, Then this is far worse than we understood. An angel that exists as pure negation is functionally invisible to us. We perceive through light, through presence. We can't see absence. But I can. The words came out before I'd fully thought them through. Or at least, I can see the pattern that absence creates. The distortions. The spaces where things should be but aren't. Uriel's expression shifted into something I couldn't read. Yes, you can. Which brings us to the question I've been avoiding. Why me specifically? I closed the case file. You said I process information differently, that my mind bridges human and divine cognition. That's not random neurological variance, that's design. We should visit the next scene. No. I stepped between him and the door. You said if I helped you for 72 hours, you'd answer my questions. I'm helping. So answer. What am I? Uriel was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't respond. When he finally spoke, his voice carried weight that made the air feel heavy. You were born 27 years ago in Providence, Rhode Island. Your parents were named Jacob and Elizabeth Brennan. They died in what was officially reported as a home invasion when you were 6 months old. The names meant nothing to me. I'd always known I was an orphan. Sister Margaret had never hidden that from me. But hearing the specifics, the reality of it, created a hollowness in my chest. They weren't killed in a home invasion, Uriel continued. They were executed, hunted down and murdered by angels who had fallen from grace, because your parents were part of a bloodline that shouldn't exist anymore. A lineage created during the first wars between heaven and hell, when God needed humans capable of understanding divine patterns, of perceiving the architecture of creation itself. What bloodline? The heirs of Metatron. Uriel's eyes held something that might have been pity. Humans with cognitive abilities that parallel angelic consciousness, capable of processing information across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously, of seeing patterns in chaos that even angels miss. You're not just gifted. You're the last surviving member of a nearly extinct species of human being. The room felt too small suddenly. I gripped the back of Jennifer Wu's chair, forcing myself to breathe steadily. Why would angels murder humans? I thought you were supposed to be the good guys. Fallen angels, the ones who followed Lucifer into rebellion. After the fall, they feared any human who might be able to anticipate their movements, decode their strategies. So they systematically eliminated the bloodline. Your parents knew the danger. They entrusted you to an angel sworn to protect you, someone who gave up their place in heaven to keep you safe. Sister Margaret's face flashed through my mind, the way she'd always seemed to know what I needed before I asked. The strange coincidences throughout my childhood, dangers that never quite materialized, threats that vanished before reaching me. Sister Margaret, I whispered. She was an angel? No, but the one who brought you to her was. He died 3 days after placing you in her care, killed by the same fallen angels who murdered your parents. He used his last strength to obscure your spiritual signature, made you appear completely human. Sister Margaret raised you believing you were simply a gifted orphan. She never knew the truth. I thought about all the times I'd felt different, isolated, unable to connect with others because my mind worked in ways they couldn't understand. I'd thought it was just neurodivergence, exceptional, but ultimately human. Now Uriel was telling me I was something else entirely, something designed. Why tell me this now? Because the angel we're hunting knows what you are. Uriel moved to the window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. The pattern of killings, the geometric progression you mapped, it's not random. It's a message. The angel is spelling out a word in 3-dimensional space using murder as the medium. What word? Metatron. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. It's hunting me. This entire spree is leading to me. Not hunting, calling. It wants you to find it, wants you to understand what it's becoming. Uriel turned back to face me. That's why Sister Margaret is targeted. It knows she's the closest thing you have to family. It's using her as bait to ensure you engage. I felt fury rising, hot and sharp. Then we're walking into a trap. Yes, but it's a trap we have no choice but to spring. Uriel's voice was calm, factual. Because if we don't, the angel will complete its transformation. It will become something that exists outside all laws, divine and natural. Something that can kill without restriction, that can reshape reality according to its will. And it will start with everyone you've ever cared about, using their deaths to fuel its ascension. I forced myself to think past the anger, past the fear. You said it's transforming. Into what? We don't know. That's what terrifies us most. Angels are fixed in their nature. We don't change. We don't evolve. We exist as we were created. But this one has found a way to break those constraints. With each murder, it absorbs a fragment of human consciousness, human potential for change. It's trying to become something hybrid, part angel, part human variability, a being with angelic power and human adaptability. A being like me, I said quietly, like what I am. It's trying to reverse engineer the Metatron bloodline. Uriel nodded slowly. That's our theory, and if it succeeds, it will be functionally unstoppable. It will have your cognitive abilities, your pattern recognition, combined with angelic strength and immortality. It could outwit heaven and overpower hell. I walked to the window, looking at my reflection in the glass. I'd spent my entire life feeling like I didn't belong anywhere, that I was too strange for human connection but not special enough to matter. Now I was being told I was the last of a designed species, created as a weapon in a war I'd never known was happening. The other crime scenes, I said. I need to see them, all of them. If this angel is building toward something, spelling out its intentions in murdered innocents, then there's more information in the pattern, details that will tell us where it is and how to stop it. We have 14 hours before the next murder occurs, Uriel said. After that, 24 more before it reaches Sister Margaret. I can transport you to each location, but the more we move through dimensions, the more strain it puts on your consciousness. You're human enough that extensive dimensional travel could cause permanent neural damage. I don't care. I turned from the window. If I'm designed to see patterns, then I need to see all of them. Every scene, every detail, that's how we find it. Uriel studied me for a moment, then nodded. Then we start with Denver, Thomas Kellerman. He died reaching for something that wasn't there. The world fractured again. This time I was ready for it, braced myself against the sensation of reality splitting into layers. But being ready didn't make it easier. My consciousness expanded across multiple versions of space, seeing the apartment in Seattle, the crime scene in Denver, the path between them as a line of probability cutting through dimensions like a knife through fabric. When we materialized in Thomas Kellerman's home office, I was on my hands and knees, blood running from both nostrils. My head felt like it was being torn apart from the inside. The pain will fade, Uriel said. Your mind is adapting, learning to process dimensional transit. Great. I wiped my nose on my sleeve, forcing myself upright. Let's make it worth the headache. Thomas Kellerman's office was small, cluttered with computer equipment and technical manuals. He'd been a software engineer, working late on a project when he died. His body had been found slumped over his keyboard, eyes open, fingers still touching the keys. I examined the keyboard first. He'd typed 47 characters in the seconds before death, random letters, no pattern. Except when I looked at the keyboard layout, at which keys he'd struck in sequence, I saw it. He was typing coordinates, I said, not standard latitude and longitude. These are dimensional coordinates, intersections between planes of existence. I pulled out my phone, photographing the screen, the keyboard, the position of his body. He saw something, understood something in his final moments, and he tried to leave us a message. Can you decode it? Give me time. I moved around the office, analyzing sightlines, checking angles. Thomas had been facing his monitor when he died, but his last voluntary movement was turning his head to the left, toward the window. He saw its reflection too, in the dark glass, the absence where something should have been. I walked to the window, placing myself where Thomas had been. The office overlooked an alley, nothing remarkable. But at 2:17 a.m. when he died, the angle would have been different. I pulled up a sun calculator on my phone, checking celestial positions. The moon, I breathed. He saw it reflected against the moon, a void in the moonlight itself. Uriel moved beside me. That's impossible. Celestial bodies can't be obscured by angels. We don't cast shadows. This one does, because it's not occupying space. It's removing it. I was seeing it now, the full scope of what we were facing. It's not just killing people. It's practicing, learning to carve larger and larger pieces of itself out of reality. The victims are test subjects. It's perfecting the technique. To what end? I thought about the three-dimensional pattern, about the geometric progression I'd mapped, about the word being spelled in murder across the country. And I understood. It's building a door, I said. A permanent threshold between existence and non-existence. Once it completes the pattern, it won't need to manifest or hide. It will be able to move between presence and absence at will. Untouchable. Invisible. Capable of appearing anywhere, to anyone, without restriction. Then we have less time than we thought. Uriel's voice held an edge of something I hadn't heard before. Fear. If it completes the door before we stop it, it becomes immune to any intervention. Divine law won't constrain it because it will exist outside those laws entirely. I photographed everything, documenting every detail. We went to 4 more scenes: Atlanta, Phoenix, Portland, Dallas. Each time, the dimensional transit left me bleeding and disoriented. Each time I pushed through, analyzing, documenting, building the profile. The pattern emerged with crystalline clarity. The murders were accelerating, the intervals between them decreasing geometrically. At the current rate, the angel would complete its transformation in 36 hours, right after killing Sister Margaret. She wasn't just bait, she was the final component, the last piece needed to complete the door. We materialized back in my apartment in Newark. I collapsed into my desk chair, my head pounding so severely I could barely see straight. But I had the information now, all of it. The pieces were fitting together. I know where it will be, I said, my voice hoarse. Not just when, where. The geometric pattern, the three-dimensional progression, it's building toward a specific set of coordinates, a convergence point. I pulled up a map on my computer, marking each murder location, plotting the trajectory. The lines intersected at a single point. Providence, Rhode Island, I whispered. The house where I was born, where my parents died. That's where it's building the door. Uriel leaned over my shoulder, studying the map. It's using your origin point as the anchor. The place where the last Metatron heir entered the world becomes the threshold where an angel exits it. Poetic. I saved the file, my hands shaking. And tomorrow night it will bring Sister Margaret there. Force me to watch as it kills her at the exact spot where my parents died. Complete the pattern with my trauma. We can evacuate her, Uriel suggested. Hide her somewhere even angels can't find. No, it will just adapt. Find another target, extend the timeline. We end this now. I stood, steadying myself against the desk. We go to Providence. We wait for it. And when it comes for her, I'll be ready. Ready how? You're human. Enhanced, yes, but still mortal. You can't fight an angel directly. I thought about the pattern I'd discovered, about the geometric progression, about Thomas Kellerman's dying message written in dimensional coordinates, about my ability to see what angels couldn't, to process information across planes of existence simultaneously. I don't need to fight it, I said. I need to trap it, hold it in place long enough for you to intervene. You said you can't see absence, but I can, which means I can predict where it will be by mapping where it isn't. Uriel's expression shifted into something that might have been respect or worry. That's never been attempted. Good. Then it won't expect it. I started packing my equipment, everything I'd need. How long until we can reach Providence? Instantaneously, but you need rest. Your mind has been stretched across dimensions repeatedly today. Push much further, and you risk permanent damage. I'll rest when Sister Margaret is safe. I shouldered my bag. Let's go. There's one more thing you need to know. Uriel's voice stopped me at the door. The angel we're hunting, the one who's killed 9 people and is building towards something catastrophic. We know its name. Does it matter? It matters because of who it was before it fell. Uriel's eyes held an expression I couldn't decipher. Its name is Layla. It was the angel assigned to protect newborns, to watch over them in their first moments of life. Your first moments. It was present at your birth, witnessed your entry into the world. The ice in my stomach turned to liquid nitrogen. You're saying the angel trying to kill me is the same one that saw me born? Yes, and we believe that's significant. Believe that it's been planning this for 27 years, waiting for you to grow, to develop your abilities fully before initiating its transformation. It doesn't just want to complete the door. It wants you to understand, to witness, to see what it's become. I thought about Jennifer Wu reading backward through her book, about Thomas Kellerman typing dimensional coordinates in his final moments, about every victim's last sight directed at their own reflection. It's making them see themselves, making them confront their own absence, their mortality. And it will do the same to you. Uriel opened the door. The question is whether you can use that against it, or whether it will destroy you in the attempt. I stepped through the doorway, feeling the air shimmer as Uriel prepared to transport us. Only one way to find out. The world fractured for the last time that day. When it resolved, we were standing in front of a burned-out house in Providence, Rhode Island, the place where I'd been born, the place where my parents had died protecting me, the place where, in less than 24 hours, everything would end, one way or another. The house looked smaller than I'd imagined. 27 years of abandonment had reduced it to a skeleton, walls charred black from the fire that had consumed it the night my parents died. The roof had collapsed inward, exposing support beams like ribs against the night sky. Yellow caution tape, faded and torn, still clung to the front porch railing. I stood on the sidewalk, staring at the structure that represented everything I'd never known about myself. My origin, my inheritance, my curse. We have 11 hours, Uriel said beside me. The angel will arrive with Sister Margaret at precisely 3:17 a.m. The timing is deliberate, the same moment you were born. How do you know the exact minute? I was there. Uriel's voice was quiet. Not in the room, but close. We all felt it when you entered the world. The heavenly host recognized the signature immediately. A Metatron heir, born after decades of silence. It was supposed to be a moment of hope. Instead, it was a death sentence for my parents. I walked toward the house, my boots crunching on broken glass and debris. Did they know? What I was, what would happen? They knew. They chose to have you anyway. Some decisions transcend survival. Uriel followed at a distance, giving me space. Your father was a mathematician. Your mother taught philosophy. They understood patterns, systems, the architecture of meaning. When they discovered what their genetic combination could produce, they saw it as their responsibility to bring you into existence. I stepped through the empty doorway into what had been the living room. Moonlight filtered through the collapsed roof, casting shadows across scorched floorboards. In the corner, I could see where furniture had stood, ghost outlines preserved in ash. Where did it happen? Upstairs, the nursery. Your mother was holding you when they came. Your father tried to fight them off. Uriel's voice held no emotion, just facts. He lasted 43 seconds. Your mother lasted longer. She was still alive when the angel I told you about arrived, the one who saved you. She lived long enough to hand you over and whisper your name. I felt my throat tighten. I'd never known my name. Sister Margaret had called me David, chosen because she'd been reading Psalms the night the angel brought me to her. But that wasn't the name my mother gave me. What did she call me? Ezekiel. It means God strengthens. Uriel moved to the staircase, testing its stability. She chose it because she knew you'd need that strength, that you'd carry weight no human should have to bear. Ezekiel. The name felt foreign and familiar simultaneously, like a word I'd known in a language I'd forgotten. I repeated it silently, testing how it fit in my mind. "The angel who saved me," I said. "What was its name?" "Raphael. He was a healer, one of the gentlest souls in heaven. He gave up everything to keep you alive. Walked away from eternal peace to die in a Providence alley 3 days later, alone and bleeding, making sure the fallen angels couldn't track you." I thought about Sister Margaret's quiet kindness, her patient teaching, the way she'd sheltered me from a world that felt too sharp and too loud. Raphael had chosen her specifically, had seen in her the qualities that could nurture a mind like mine without trying to fix it or diminish it. "I need to prepare," I said, pushing past the grief that threatened to overwhelm me. "If Layla arrives in 11 hours, I need to understand this space. Map it. Find the angles where it will manifest." I spent the next hour documenting everything, measuring distances, calculating sight lines, photographing every corner from multiple perspectives. The house formed a natural geometric container, its layout corresponding to principles I recognized from sacred architecture. Golden ratios in the room dimensions, Fibonacci spirals in the staircase design. My parents had chosen this place deliberately. Uriel watched me work, occasionally answering questions about angelic manifestation patterns, about how absence could be detected through distortion. We were building a trap together, human cognition and divine knowledge, synthesizing into something neither of us could have created alone. "There," I said finally, marking a spot in what had been the nursery. "This is where it will appear, the convergence point, where the geometric pattern completes itself. How can you be certain? Because it's where I was born, where my mother died, where maximum trauma intersects with maximum symbolism. Layla is theatrical. Every murder has been staged for effect. This will be the grand finale." I set up my equipment in a circle around the spot, cameras with motion sensors, audio recorders, a laptop running pattern recognition software I'd modified specifically to detect spatial distortions. And in the center I placed a chair, the same type of chair Jennifer Wu had died in, an invitation, a challenge. "When it arrives with Sister Margaret, it will try to make me watch," I said, finalizing the setup. "Force me to witness her death the way I would have witnessed my mother's if Raphael hadn't intervened. That's when it will be most vulnerable, when it's focused on my reaction instead of its own positioning." "And then what?" Uriel stood in the doorway, backlit by moonlight. "Even if you trap it, hold it in place, I can't simply destroy it. Angels can't kill other angels. That's an absolute law. I know, but you can contain it. Bind it between dimensions where it can't complete its transformation." I turned to face him. "That's what we're actually doing here, not killing, imprisoning. For how long? Forever, if necessary." I checked my watch. 9 hours remaining. We should prepare for Sister Margaret's arrival. She needs to understand what's happening, why she's being used. "No." Uriel's voice was firm. "She can't know. If she understands the stakes, her fear will amplify. Make her a stronger anchor for Layla's purposes. She needs to remain calm, unaware. You want me to let her walk into this blind? I want you to save her life, and that requires her cooperation without her knowledge." Uriel moved closer. "Layla will bring her here believing she's coming to help you, that you're in danger. Sister Margaret will see the burned house and want to find you. That maternal instinct, that need to protect, will make her lower her guard. And that's when we strike." I hated it, hated using her love for me as a weapon, but I understood the logic. "How do we get her in position?" "You'll call her. Tell her you've discovered something about your past, that you need her here. She'll come. Layla will intercept her en route and manipulate the situation to make it appear you're inside, waiting." Uriel pulled out a phone I hadn't seen him carrying. "Make the call, I'll ensure it reaches her." My hand shook as I dialed the number I'd memorized years ago but rarely used. Sister Margaret had always respected my need for distance, for space to process the world in my own way. Our conversations were infrequent but meaningful. Now I was about to weaponize that trust. She answered on the second ring. "David, it's late. Are you all right?" Hearing her voice, warm and concerned despite the hour, nearly broke my resolve. Sister Margaret, I need you to come to Providence. There's something I have to show you. Something about my parents. A pause. Your parents. David, what's happened? I found the house where I was born, where they died. There are answers here, things I need you to help me understand. I forced my voice to remain steady. Please, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Of course. Give me the address. I'll leave within the hour. I provided the location, feeling like I was sealing her death warrant even as I tried to prevent it. Be careful. The neighborhood isn't safe. I've navigated worse than unsafe neighborhoods. Her voice held a smile I couldn't see but could imagine perfectly. I'll be there by 3. Try not to explore too much without me. The line went dead. I stood holding the phone, staring at it like it might offer absolution. It's done, Uriel said. Now we wait. The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. I reviewed my calculations, double-checked equipment, ran simulations in my head of every possible outcome. Uriel remained silent, standing guard at the window, watching for the approach that would signal the beginning of the end. At 2:47 a.m., the temperature dropped, not gradually, instantly. My breath crystallized in front of my face. Frost spread across the charred walls, white and glittering in the moonlight. The air itself seemed to thicken, becoming viscous, resistant. It's early, Uriel said, tension evident in his posture. That's not part of the pattern. It knows we're here. I moved to my laptop, checking the sensors. Nothing yet. No distortions, no spatial anomalies, but the cold was unmistakable. It's testing us, seeing if we'll panic. We should evacuate, reset the trap elsewhere. No, we hold position. This is psychological warfare. It wants us to doubt ourselves. I forced my breathing to remain steady despite the cold gnawing at my lungs. Sister Margaret isn't here yet. Nothing happens until she arrives. The cold intensified. Ice formed on the equipment, on my hands, on Uriel's motionless form. The house groaned under the sudden temperature shift, wood contracting, metal creaking. And then, cutting through the silence, I heard it. Footsteps on the front porch. Sister Margaret's voice calling my name. David? Are you in there? I moved toward the stairs, but Uriel grabbed my arm. Wait, look at your sensors. The laptop screen showed spatial distortions forming around the entire house. Not inside, outside. A cage of absence, preventing anything from entering or leaving. Layla had surrounded us before revealing itself. David, please. Sister Margaret's voice held fear now. The door won't open, something's wrong. I pulled free from Uriel's grip and ran down the stairs. Through the empty doorframe, I could see her silhouette on the porch, trying the handle of a door that no longer existed. But she couldn't see inside. Couldn't see me standing 10 feet away. It's separating perception, I said. She thinks there's a door, thinks the house is intact, we're looking at different versions of reality. Then we can't reach her. Uriel descended the stairs behind me. And she can't reach us. Layla has isolated all the pieces. Sister Margaret turned away from the door and I saw genuine terror on her face. She was looking at something I couldn't see, backing away, her mouth open in a scream I couldn't hear through the dimensional barrier. No, I whispered. It's showing her something, making her see. And then I understood. Layla wasn't inside the house with us. It was outside with Sister Margaret. The trap I'd built was meaningless because I'd assumed wrong. The angel wasn't theatrical for its own sake. It was precise, efficient. It had separated us to eliminate the threat I posed before completing its final murder. We have to break through, I said, moving back to the nursery. Collapse the dimensional barrier. That's not possible from inside. We're trapped as thoroughly as she is. Nothing's impossible, it's just mathematics. I pulled up the sensor data, analyzing the distortion patterns, the frequency of spatial manipulation. Layla had created the barrier, which meant it followed rules. Divine rules. And rules could be broken if you understood them. I started typing, running calculations, mapping the barrier's structure in three-dimensional space. It was elegant, I had to admit. A perfect sphere of folded reality, keeping each participant isolated while allowing Layla to move freely between the sections. But elegant systems have weak points. Convergence nodes where the mathematics become unstable. There, I said, pointing to a spot on the screen. The barrier intersects with itself at this coordinate. If we apply force at that exact point, the whole structure collapses. What kind of force? Dimensional, the same energy you use to transport between locations, but focused, concentrated, all of it directed at a single point simultaneously. Uriel studied the calculations. That would require me to channel more power than I've ever attempted. It could unmake me entirely. Or it could work. I met his eyes. Your choice, but make it fast. Sister Margaret has maybe 2 minutes before Layla completes whatever it's showing her. Uriel nodded once, then moved to the convergence point I'd identified. His form began to glow, soft at first, then intensifying until I had to look away. The air hummed with energy, a frequency so low I felt it in my bones rather than heard it. The world screamed. Reality tore open like fabric, and through the gap I saw Sister Margaret on the porch, frozen in place, staring at an absence so profound it hurt to perceive. An angel-shaped void, consuming light and warmth and hope. Layla in its true form, or rather, in its true absence. I ran through the tear before it could close, feeling my consciousness splinter across the dimensional boundary. Pain erupted behind my eyes, blood pouring from my nose, but I didn't stop. I threw myself between Sister Margaret and the void, forcing my mind to focus, to see, to process the impossible geometry of what I was facing. Layla turned its attention to me. I can't describe what it felt like to be truly seen by an angel of absence. Imagine every fear you've ever had, every moment of inadequacy, every second of doubt, all compressed into a single instant of recognition. I saw myself as nothing, as a mistake, as a failed design that should never have existed. But I also saw the pattern. The void wasn't random. It followed mathematical principles, folded space according to specific rules, and in following those rules it created predictable outcomes. Layla had become so focused on perfecting its transformation that it had made itself rigid, deterministic, exactly what I needed. "Uriel!" I screamed, my voice barely audible over the howling absence. "The convergence point, it's not in the house, it's here, right here where I'm standing." I saw understanding flash across Uriel's luminous form. He moved with speed that defied physics, positioning himself on the opposite side of the void from where I stood, and then he began to channel energy again, not to break through a barrier, but to create one. A cage of light and presence, the opposite of what Layla had become. The void writhed, trying to escape, but I held my position. I fed Uriel coordinates, angles, adjustments in real time, my mind processing spatial mathematics faster than conscious thought. We were building a prison together, using my ability to see the pattern and his ability to enforce it. Layla tried to withdraw, to collapse back into non-existence, but I'd mapped every possible configuration. Every route of escape was blocked. We'd created a container of pure presence so absolute that absence couldn't exist within it. The void began to shrink. I saw flashes of what Layla had been before its fall. A gentle angel devoted to protecting newborns, guiding souls into their first moments of life. It had witnessed thousands of births, held thousands of tiny hands as they entered the world. But somewhere in that endless repetition, it had grown bitter, had seen human fragility and thought it weakness, had decided that existence itself was a prison and sought to escape through negation. It had watched me being born, this last Metatron heir, and seen not hope, but opportunity. A mind that could perceive its true form, a consciousness that could validate its transformation. It wanted me to understand, to witness, to acknowledge what it had become. "I see you," I said, my voice steady despite the agony tearing through my nervous system. "I understand what you're trying to achieve. And I'm telling you it's not freedom. It's just another cage, a different kind of prison. The void stopped shrinking. In that moment of hesitation, I felt something that might have been communication. Not words, pure concept, transferred directly into my consciousness. Why fight inevitability? Why cling to existence when absence offers peace? Because existence matters, I said, not because it's easy or comfortable or fair, but because every moment contains possibility. Every breath is a chance to choose differently. You're trying to escape pain by erasing yourself, but all you're doing is spreading that erasure to others. You don't understand. You've never experienced our burden, eternal awareness, unchanging purpose. I sought freedom through transformation. You sought escape through destruction. I felt my legs giving out, my body shutting down from the strain of dimensional exposure. And in the process, you killed 9 innocent people. You tried to kill Sister Margaret. You murdered my parents 27 years ago. The void shuddered. That wasn't me. I wasn't fallen then. I was still... Different angels. Same result. I collapsed to my knees, my vision tunneling. Whether you personally killed them or not, my parents died because angels feared what I represented. And you tried to complete what they started, so no, I don't understand your burden, and I don't forgive it. The cage of light contracted further, squeezing the void into an impossibly small space. Layla's presence, or absence, or whatever it had become, compressed into a single point of anti-existence. Uriel's energy surrounded it completely, sealing it away from reality. And then it was over. The cold vanished. The spatial distortions collapsed. I was kneeling on a porch in Providence, bleeding and shaking, with Sister Margaret's hands on my shoulders. "David," she was saying, her voice panicked. "David, look at me. Stay with me." I tried to focus on her face, but my vision kept fragmenting. Multiple versions of her, layered across dimensional planes I could no longer separate. "Did we stop it?" "You stopped it." Uriel's voice came from somewhere behind me. "The void is contained, bound between dimensions where it can't harm anyone or complete its transformation. It will remain there until the end of existence itself." Sister Margaret looked between us, her expression confused and frightened. "What's happening? David, who is this man? What void is he talking about?" "It's complicated," I managed, before consciousness deserted me entirely. I woke in a hospital 3 days later. The doctors couldn't explain what had happened to me. Severe neural trauma with no identifiable cause, hemorrhaging behind the eyes. Fractures in my cognitive processing that slowly healed themselves through mechanisms they couldn't understand. Sister Margaret sat beside my bed, holding my hand. She'd aged in the days since Providence, new lines around her eyes, new gray in her hair. But she was alive, whole, safe. "You scared me," she said when she saw me awake. "More than I've ever been scared in my life. I'm sorry." My voice came out raspy. "I didn't mean to involve you in this. David. Or should I say Ezekiel?" She smiled sadly. "A man named Uriel told me everything. About your parents, about what you are, about what you did to save my life. I tried to sit up. Failed. You know? I know enough. I know you're the last of a bloodline I didn't understand existed. I know angels are real and some of them are broken. I know you nearly died trapping something that wanted to unmake reality itself." She squeezed my hand. "And I know that the baby Raphael brought to me 27 years ago grew up to be exactly what his mother hoped he would be. Strong enough to carry an impossible burden." Tears burned in my eyes. "I don't feel strong. I feel like I barely survived." "That's what strength looks like, David, not invincibility. Survival despite the cost." She reached up, wiping tears from my face with gentle fingers. "Raphael chose me to raise you because he knew I'd love you for who you are, not what you were designed to be. And I do. No matter what bloodline runs through you, no matter what divine purposes you serve, you're still the scared little boy who couldn't sleep without a nightlight and the brilliant young man who sees patterns in chaos. You're still mine." I held onto her hand like a lifeline. What happens now? Now you heal. And then you decide what you want to do with this knowledge, with these abilities. She glanced toward the window where Uriel stood, barely visible in the morning light. I suspect you'll have opportunities, choices to make about whether to use what you are in service of something larger. I followed her gaze. Uriel nodded slightly, an acknowledgement of possibility. The heavenly host would want my help again. There would be other crimes, other angels who broke their nature, other patterns only I could see. But right now, that future could wait. Right now, I said, I just want to rest. And maybe, when I'm better, you could tell me stories about when I was little, about the things I did that made you laugh, the human parts of me that had nothing to do with bloodlines or divine design. Sister Margaret smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her worry. I'd like that very much. She stayed with me through the morning, telling stories about a child who'd been afraid of thunder, who'd memorized entire books by age 5, who'd once tried to count every star in the sky and cried when he realized it was impossible. Stories about a human boy named David who'd never known he was meant to be anything more. And maybe that was the point. Maybe being the last Metatron heir didn't define me. Maybe having cognitive abilities that bridged human and divine didn't make me less human. Maybe I was simply Ezekiel Brennan, son of Jacob and Elizabeth, raised by Sister Margaret, protected by Raphael, capable of extraordinary things but still fundamentally, beautifully mortal. 3 weeks later, I stood in front of the burned house in Providence one final time. Uriel had arranged for it to be demolished, the land consecrated, the geographical anchor for Layla's pattern erased from physical reality. Workers were scheduled to arrive in the morning. I placed flowers where the nursery had been. White roses for my mother, blue forget-me-nots for my father, and a single red carnation for Raphael, the angel who'd given everything so I could live. They would be proud, Uriel said, appearing beside me in that way he had of simply existing where he hadn't been a moment before. You think so? I know so. You used the gifts they gave you, biological and circumstantial, to save innocent lives, to prevent catastrophe. That's exactly what they hoped you'd do. I was quiet for a long moment, looking at the house that represented everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. Will there be others? Other angels who break? Other patterns I'll need to see? Yes. Uriel's honesty was both refreshing and terrifying. The universe is vast and complicated. Divine law is ancient but not perfect. There will be cracks, failures, moments when only someone like you can bridge the gap between what heaven knows and what humans experience. And you want me to be that bridge. I want you to choose to be that bridge. There's a difference. Uriel turned to face me fully. What Layla tried to become, what it sought through negation, you already are through integration. You exist between worlds, between possibilities. That makes you invaluable, but it also makes you vulnerable, and I won't lie to you about the cost. I thought about the pain, the blood, the fractured consciousness, about Sister Margaret's fear, about 9 innocent people who died before I'd understood the pattern, about my parents murdered for giving birth to exactly what I was. If I say no, then you return to your life, solve human crimes with human methods, live quietly, safely, without divine entanglements. Uriel's expression held no judgment. It would be a good life, possibly a longer one. No one would blame you. But the next time an angel breaks, the next time a pattern emerges that only a Metatron heir can see, someone else will try to stop it. They'll likely fail. People will die. And you'll know you could have prevented it. Uriel paused. But that knowledge, that guilt, that's not a fair reason to say yes. You should only accept this path if you genuinely believe it's what you want to do with your life. I looked at the flowers I'd placed, thinking about legacy and choice and the weight of inherited purpose. My parents had chosen to bring me into existence knowing it would cost them everything. Raphael had chosen to die saving me. Sister Margaret had chosen to raise me without understanding why I was different. Every person who'd shaped my life had made impossible choices because they believed something mattered more than their own safety. Maybe it was my turn to make an impossible choice. I'll do it, I said. I'll help when you need me. On one condition. Name it. You protect Sister Margaret, completely, absolutely. Whatever bargains you need to make, whatever resources you need to allocate, she stays safe. Always. That's the price. Uriel considered this. Done. She'll be under constant protection, though she'll never know it. Any threat to her will be neutralized before it materializes. You have my word. Then we have a deal. I extended my hand. Uriel shook it, and I felt energy pulse through the contact. Not painful, but profound. A connection being forged, a compact being sealed. When he released my hand, I saw faint luminescence fading from my skin. What was that? A mark. Invisible to humans, but recognized by all angels. It identifies you as under divine protection. No angel, fallen or otherwise, can harm you directly without violating fundamental law. Uriel smiled slightly. Consider it hazard pay. I flexed my hand, feeling normal but somehow changed. So what happens now? Do I wait for your call? Is there some kind of angelic emergency hotline? You live your life. Solve your cases. Exist as you always have. When we need you, I'll find you. Uriel began to fade, becoming translucent in the morning light. And Ezekiel? Thank you for choosing to carry this burden when you didn't have to. Ezekiel, I repeated, testing the name again. I think I prefer David, actually. Ezekiel feels like someone else. Someone I might become but haven't yet. Then David it is. Uriel's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Until next time. He vanished completely, leaving me alone with a burned house and a future I couldn't predict. I took one last look at the flowers, at the spot where I'd been born and where I'd nearly died, and then I turned away. I had cases waiting back in Newark, mysteries that needed solving, patterns only I could see. Some of them might be human crimes, some might be divine ones, but either way they were mine to unravel. I walked back to my car, feeling the weight of what I'd agreed to, but also something else, something lighter, purpose, direction, a reason for being what I was instead of simply surviving it. The last Metatron heir, the bridge between worlds. David Brennan, investigator of the impossible. And for the first time in my life, that felt like enough.